tonight out on the Velocette again. My little torque wrench turned up. Quite a nice little 1/4 inch drive thing. Luckily I've got some 1/4 to 1/2 inch adapters because I had to use my socket set here to be able to do these up. And I sort of did it up in stages. There's a pattern for doing this, just the same as any other cylinder head. And I just went around really slowly, and I've torqued them all up to 10 foot-pounds, which kind of felt about right. You can feel it. So those are done up. After the engine's run, you need to go back and you retighten them a couple of times. So I've also just been setting the tappet clearances, valve clearances. This is the original tool, and when I first saw this I didn't know what it was for. What this does is the tappets have little flats on them, so you put that in there and it slips down between the two flats on the tappets and stops them turning. And then you have to undo the lock nut, and then you can adjust the little screw on the end of the tappet itself. There is not a lot of space here. So it's a 2BA screw on the end, so I've got a little tiny spanner for that. And I ended up grinding down an old Whitworth spanner that I have. And this one, actually, you can see it. It's got a big crack through it. So I've been expecting this to break forever, and it hasn't so far. So I ground the edges of this down to make it thinner, so you can actually get it in there and rotate those things. I was looking at the original toolkit, and the original spanner is here somewhere. I did have it here somewhere. And that's actually been ground down as well. So it is around here, but I didn't want to regrind the original. Not sure where I've put it. Possibly back in the box. So next time I go to a swap meet, I'll have a look out for another spanner that I can grind down. We'll see what we can find, because I'm not sure how long this one's going to last with that giant crack all the way. It's like all the way across it. It goes all the way from there right across. So that's kind of interesting. So now I can put my gasket back and put the cover on there. Spark plugs I'll gap to, it's either 20 thou or 25. I'll try 20, and I can put those in. I have noticed that the starter ratchet is slipping, so I did check that because I've got some of the parts to replace those. It's a little bit fiddly by the looks of it, but I do have a new gear and bits and pieces. And of course that would mean taking all of this apart again. So I did check to make sure. It seemed like it was fine. There is wear there, but it seemed like it would be okay. But of course, as soon as I started doing this, you find a place where it slips a little bit. So I'll have to keep an eye on that. I think it should be all right. These don't seem too difficult to start. When you see people starting them, they flick over pretty easily, I think. So tappet clearances are set. These are new club valves. So I've used 4 thou on the inlet and 8 thou on the exhaust, as per the instructions. And it's getting pretty close to being able to be set up to actually see if it'll start. So that's tappets done. I can now bolt the inlet manifold on, because you need to take this off to get to the tappets, of course. So I can put that on with its gaskets. The exhaust pipes will just fit through there. The pipes have a little flange on the end, and then these sort of clamp them in place. Again, these are only all held with tiny 2BA nuts. It's these things. It's all so small. I haven't put anything to seal these. I don't think I'll need to. I think they should be okay as they are. There's not a huge amount of oil splashing around in there. I don't think so anyway. So it's easy enough to start off with those, and if it leaks then put new gaskets with a bit of sealant. But we'll see. And these sort of things, I'm only using this tiny little spanner to do them up. And then you can be guaranteed you're not putting too much torque on them. 10 foot-pounds for the head nuts there. Head studs isn't a lot. It's really quite interesting how delicate some of this seems to be. That there. I didn't do anything yesterday because I was out all day catching up with a friend, but since I had to drive into the city, I stopped off on the way and bought proper bike riding gear. So full face helmet, a decent jacket with the right sort of padding and that sort of thing in it, decent pants and riding boots as well. So no excuses now, really. I probably do have to go and sit my motorcycle license. Well, I guess the excuse will be if the bike doesn't run. But, we're getting closer. Just looking at the oil filter, and instead of the original felt type filters, I decided to use the modern paper ones, which the spares sell, mainly because I can get these locally, so I don't have to order them from the UK every time I want a new one. The only problem with these is they're slightly shorter than the originals, so if you just fit them in the filter housing, they won't seal either end. So to get around that, I made up a thick steel washer that will just sit in the bottom there, and then when this all goes back together, the filter has these rubber ends, so it will compress down between the ends and the top cover, and that'll seal it, just to make sure you've got full flow going through the paper element. I am just laser cutting a new gasket for the top, because of course I've got the little oil pickup, and the ones that come from the spares don't have that little hole. I tried punching one, but it's a 1.6mm thick gasket and it's split. So I've got some 1.6mm gasket material, so I'm just going to basically laser cut my own ones of those. When I put the fitting in the top, I deliberately threaded it through all the way so that it goes far enough that the gasket will be captured by the fitting, so it can't rotate and block the pickup to the oil pressure gauge. The other thing I want to do tonight, quickly, it's getting reasonably late, it's about 7 o'clock, is I'll rub down the outside of these and slide them into the leather outers. Put one of the panniers back into its little metal box carrier thing. It looks okay. The only thing that's weird on these is the straps and the buckles don't line up. It's almost like they expect there to be this much extra stuff in the top of the little bag. So I think what I'll do when I put it on the bike, in order to be able to actually do those up, is I'll roll up some sort of fabric or some old towels or something that can sit in the top there to give that the right shape. Because if it's just flat, the buckle's way too high up. Seems a bit odd. This one, you can see where the stitching is coming undone, so I need to re-stitch that. I just need to get the right sort of thread, and that stuff is it's basically beeswax and a bunch of different oils, including eucalyptus, which is why it has a distinctive smell, all of which will help stop the rust on the steel. I've laser cut a couple of gaskets for the inlet, so that's now bolted on, and club exhaust gaskets in there, and I'm just laser cutting the gasket that goes in the top here. But you can sort of see it should pull. It pulls straight when it's done up. I have done it up before, but you can see how the what can we use? The rubber there brings it just up to the right level. It's not compressing too much, but it should be enough to seal, I hope. I'm not actually sure which is the inlet and which is the outlet, so I'd have to look at the parts book to figure out how the oil pump works. This is the oil filter in place. It's going to be interesting to see if it leaks, because it's just kind of relying on the ends of the tubes cutting into the gaskets more or less to sort of seal it. There's fibre washers either end, a little oil pickup for the pressure gauge, and I've attached the plug leads. It did seem a little bit loose, so give them a bit of a clean. Yeah, definitely getting closer to having a go at starting this thing at some point. Tonight I'm looking at making a stand to sit the engine on so I can fit the exhaust, fit the rear wheel, have this all standing up, mount the radiator at the front here, and then I can put this down on the ground and bench test it on the ground, if that makes sense. I did have the engine mounting bracket backwards. I had the tabs going the wrong way, but I fixed that. And this bracket uses these same sort of little rubber buffers that are used on the back of the gearbox, same as these. I had extra ones, so that was good. And I think I've mentioned before that this has taken a big wallop on this side, which is why the footboard was all mangled up and everything was bent, including the lower frame tube. So I have been straightening that using my straight edge kind of across it. I figure these need to be in the same plane. So I have fixed that now. That's pretty close. I had to basically put it in like that and use my steel bar as a lever just to bend it to where it needs to be. This might need to come in a little bit further. And what I'm going to do is mount blocks here. You can see I've drilled a hole and then cut the block in half, so these will sit down on that, just for the engine stand. Unfortunately my bandsaw broke. I was going to saw them up and it kind of went ping and then stopped working quite so well. The blade jumped forwards, and it turns out it is this, which is the mechanism that lets you control the angle of this top wheel. There's an adjuster, this on the back, and that would pivot this axle up and down so you can get it all running through. And this is just sort of that sort of pot metal stuff, and this piece is broken off, so I don't think you can weld this stuff. I'm pretty sure epoxy isn't going to be strong enough to hold it. Well, it could be. I could always try JB welding it and see if that's going to be strong enough. It's probably the first thing to try, because it might work for a little while. And if not, I'm going to have to take this apart, and it's not designed to come apart. There seems to be I think there's a pin in there, so I can probably knock that pin out. I think that's one of the... Oh yeah, that's one of the pins has already fallen out. And maybe I need to make a new one of these. Make something out of steel, I guess, would be better. Because that's the thing that you need for the screw to push on. That'll be a job for a different day. which is a bit annoying. So I cut this on the metal bandsaw. So that's what I'm going to do now. Finish straightening this front piece. You can see it's still not quite there. Yeah, it's in just a little bit. So quick tweak on this, and then I can bolt that back together and keep going with this stand. Going to make sure I've got enough space for the muffler. Pretty sure there is. I think that's sitting higher than it does on the bike, actually. It's pretty close. The back of the muffler, there's a little drain hole there which is to let condensation out, so I was just making sure that was clear. Seems to be the night for things breaking, because I don't think that's supposed to do that. So probably need to take this apart and check it out, but yeah, hole is clear now. Ooh, a bit smoky. And I have had to, unfortunately my board isn't square, and because the bandsaw is broken I can't square it up, but I drew some lines on it, and I've sort of been measuring things to make sure this is straight, because this bracket can bend. So I think I've got it now where this bar is straight and the bracket is in the right position, because I can measure from here to here, say here to here, and get all of that equal. So that's a lot better now. I've got the rear bevel drive back on and the rear wheel back on. It wasn't too hard. You can hear the gearbox. And there is something a bit strange going on with the brakes. There's a lot of movement in there, and you should be able to do this up tight and not have the brake pedal bind, but on mine, when I do it up tight, it gets stuck. And I think what may be happening is somebody's fixed this by welding on these big hunks of steel. I'm guessing where the top of the kickstand got wore down in here. So I think what's happening is when I tighten this bolt, it's the brake pedal is hitting that piece of steel that's been welded on there. It's a piece of sort of U-section they've welded all the way around. So I think what I'm going to have to do is take this off and fix that. I think that might help. The other problem I had was I could not get the new exhaust pipes into the new muffler. I've just realized that that exhaust pipe is very close there. So a little bit of tweaking might be needed. Well, it's the same on the other side. It is very close to that oil pan. I suppose that'll keep the oil warm. But again, there's still no oil in everything. But it definitely all seems to be working. This is all back on. I think the next thing to do will be fix this, take this off, get this fixed. I want to make sure, because this was assembled all wrong, just a random collection of washers and bits and pieces. I want to check the other side to see if that's assembled correctly. There's little top hat bushes and spacer washers. They all have to go in the exact right places, otherwise things bind up. And you need a little bit of a gap here, because this is where the footboard fits between the rear frame and the bracket. The edge of it has to slot in there. But other than that, it's looking good. I need to build a sort of cradle that goes under the rear wheel to keep that lifted up. There's just a block of wood there now. Obviously I don't want to test it like that, because if the block fell out, the rear wheel will hit the ground, and if the engine's running, that's going to take off. So I will make something that sits underneath there to hold that up out of the way. And then I need to figure out temporarily hooking up the radiator on the front here and a little petrol tank. I was thinking what I should do is just squirt a little bit of fuel in it once I've got oil and everything, hook the battery up and see if I can get it to cough. Obviously it won't run, and I don't want it to run without the radiator, but at least that would tell me if the ignition is working and if it's going to fire. But, the other thing I may do is replace that rear brake cable. I do have a new one. I'll check, compare the lengths and see if that's stretched, because it seems like there isn't a lot of adjustment left on it. But I think that's kind of where I need to leave it tonight. Actually come out after dinner because I really wanted to get this sorted out. I'm not going to do any grinding or welding on this tonight, but I think I will clean these up. It's a bit rough, even though it's kind of part of its history. I think I can do a better repair there. And I figured out why the brake pedal wasn't working the way I thought it should, and was binding up if you tighten the nut up all the way. The reason was there's two bushes in here, and one of them had seized on the bolt, so that's why it was all tight. I had to ruin the bush to get it off. It was really stuck on there. You can actually see maybe the pitting and corrosion on the shaft there, but that's okay. I went through my random box of stuff and happened to find exactly the right bush, so hopefully that fits on there quite nicely, and then that should fit into there. I should just be able to push that home. I may run a 1/2 inch reamer through it, that's the diameter, but I think that'll fix that, which is good. I found the new rear brake cable that I got. This is from the spares. I thought I had front brake, clutch and throttle as well, but I can't seem to find them, so pretty sure I ordered a whole set, but I'll have to look. I may need to order those. But this is the new rear one, and I've tried to lay them as straight as I can, but you can see that the old one is 1/2 inch longer, so that explains why it was getting close to the end of its travel in the right position. So I think replacing that is definitely the right thing to do. Also because the ends of these are kind of hammered out a bit, and it's actually quite hard to get them into the little clevis things. So I think fitting the new one will make that much easier. And I can't even remember if I mentioned I have replaced the bush in there now. I did ream it out, 1/2 inch reamer, and that is now free to pivot, which is good. There's a little gap in between the two bushes, so I put in grease, as much grease as I could fit in there. I think that'll be fine in there. Cleaned up the hardware. These are the little top hats, so this is what I had to make for the other side. And the way these all kind of work is it clamps things in the right way that things are free to move. So I'll just grease everything when I put it all back together. Clean up that. I do need to, I thought this was the box with the cables. So I got a new speedo drive, which I need because the old one broke. That's a tail light. Those are front and rear springs. Those were all parts for the other bike. That should all be engine stuff. Extra set of panniers. I'll have to go through it. Not in there. No. Sure, I had them somewhere. I'll have to check back on my order and see if I did actually order them. I may not have ordered them. This is the clutch cable, and again this is pretty knackered. It's got a little adjuster in the middle there, but you can see where the little ferrule things have come off the ends. It's probably easier just to start with a new one. I don't think cables are too expensive. I've removed the two bits of steel. One I was able to just knock off with a cold chisel. The other one I did have to cut through one of the welds, but again the rest of it just kind of knocked off. So they weren't welded particularly well. This is the one I cut, and you can sort of see what they were covering up now. I think part of that broke off when I pulled off the tab. But I should be able to sort of smooth these out now, clean it up, see what we're working with. And then when I'm done, I'll just give it a light spray with some black zinc rich paint, just so it doesn't rust, but I'm not going to repaint the whole thing. Yeah, you can see how that one is cracked as well. So I should be able to clean that up. I might need to give it a bit more of a clean with a bit of degreaser just in there. And I think probably tomorrow night now after work I'll be able to take this outside to grind it, get it smooth. I may need to set a little piece of metal in there, but I should be able to weld this up, no problem, just with MIG, and then clean it all up. And I think doing that and fixing the bush in the brake pedal should sort that out. All the right parts are there, unlike the other side, so the little top hats and things, and as I mentioned, they sort of clamp it together in a particular way so that it's free to move but it's not free to wobble. I have fitted the new rear brake cable as well. Still haven't found the other ones. I suspect I didn't order them, which probably means I can at least use the throttle and the front brake off the other bike. If I didn't order new ones, I would have assumed they were good enough to use. Not the throttle, the clutch, sorry. Throttle will be different because this bike uses a different carburetor to the other one, so I believe the throttle cables are slightly different. This one, again, it's pretty manky, but it may work. It seems very loose though, especially up here. So yeah, we'll see. I think that's really all I can do tonight. It's a bit late to be making noise with grinding and doing welding and stuff. Out tonight after work. It's a bit of a rainy day today, which is good because we need the water. And I've been out fixing the kickstand, and I was just going to blob it up with weld, but then I decided the approach that they'd taken wasn't bad, it was just badly executed. So I went and looked through my scrap bin and I found a piece of thick wall square tubing, and I ended up cutting out a couple of little pieces of that, and I cut out the corresponding section in the kickstand and welded those in, and then just ground it smooth. You might be able to see there's a blob of weld on the inside as well. And then I made these oversized because you have to sort of file these down to get them exactly right, so that when the bike is on the kickstand, it goes slightly over center, and that's what locks it into place. I'm not sure I've got that exactly right. I compared it to the other one I've got, but I think it's going to be a matter of getting everything assembled, and then I will be able to see if it rocks up onto the kickstand properly and stays there and isn't likely to fall over. Apparently they are prone to overbalancing, like tipping over and the kickstand coming off. I think some of the guidance in one of the manuals was, or in one of the technical notes was, you don't park them facing down a camber or down a hill because they can fall off the kickstand. So I think that's good enough to reassemble it. I just gave it a quick touch up of some satin black where the bare metal was, just so it doesn't rust quite as much. But I think that'll be fine. Goes that way around. So I'm just waiting for the paint to dry a little bit more, and then I will reattach that. And then I think I'm ready to start putting fluids in this thing. And again, I think it may be worth just seeing if I can get it to spark by putting a little bit of fuel in the cylinders and kicking it over and see if it pops. And if that works, then I know the ignition system is correct, and I can go ahead and attach the carburetor, figure out how I'm going to mount the radiator for this test stand, and actually fire it up. This is all back together, and it's got all its fluids in it. I'm hoping that kickstand is far enough forward to be over center. I think it should be. I have tried turning it over, but I don't seem to have spark. I have had spark before. I probably need to adjust the points, because I don't think I ever actually adjusted them. I just cleaned them and then manually operated them to see if I got a spark. I haven't tried getting it to spark by turning it over. And the other thing I'm interested in, now I've put all the fluids in it, is if I'll see oil come out of here. Theoretically I should, of course, but so far I haven't. That little ratchet is worn in a couple of places. So at some point I would have thought I'd see oil come out of here. So that's kind of interesting. It hasn't happened yet. I don't know how much I need to do that before I see the oil. And of course, maybe I should have filled up the oil filter first, but that's a bit tricky, because if you undo the nut on the top, the thing at the bottom comes loose as well, so all the oil will just fall out. But that's probably, I need to clean that dipstick. I suspect it's just taking a little while to pump the oil around. I did fit the rear brake cable. That's right at the limit of its adjustment, like new, so it can't really go any tighter, but there is room for when it slackens off, and that works well. Also, the brake pedal is working correctly now. I don't know if that normally should be touching the bottom of the cylinder like that. I don't see what limits its motion except for down here. So that could be a little bit annoying. I'm guessing this is a bit worn. So I don't know if I need to put something over that just to stop it. I don't know if it would rattle under the bottom of the cylinder there. I mean, it looks like it's been doing that for years because of the wear on the thing. So maybe that's normal. I'm just going to try turning it over a few more times by hand. The plugs are out, so there's no compression. And I should see the level on the dipstick go down as it fills up the oil system, I would hope. So we'll give it a few more tries. Ignition I'll do a different day. But it's looking pretty good. It occurred to me, probably later than it should have, the easier way to do this is I've got the back wheel off the ground, so I just put it in gear and turned the back wheel, which drives the engine, of course, and I'm spurting, so that's good. Means there is oil pressure, and it also means the oil filter is now full, so I can top up the the oil level in the engine, because there'll be a bit of volume in there. And take it out of gear. It's going the wrong way. So that's good. I did have a little bit of oil leaking around the bottom as well, so I had to tighten this up. I think this is going to have to be pretty tight to get it to seal. But oil leak from there, that's good. So tomorrow, oh no, it won't be tomorrow, I have to go into the city tomorrow. Friday or the weekend, I'll pull this cover off and have another look in there. I fitted little rubber washers under these just to stop this getting all mangled up, and that should helpfully help seal it, but also keep it all neat and tidy. The other interesting thing will be see if this leaks oil from anywhere else overnight. But yep, definitely a step closer.